The frequent engine stalling of their trucks caused the starter to be damaged due to excessive use. Pakistan did not have a new one to buy and replace. When the truck could not start normally, they could only find this old shop for disassembly and repair. After removing the electric book from the starter, the master first ruled out the problem of carbon brushes and one-way clutches. Seeing the orange color of the electric book, the master already understood the problem of the starter. The illusionist was completely separated from the electric book shaft. The master had completely removed the electric book from the electric book slot. The main purpose is to prevent the winding from being pulled apart during disassembly. The general illusionist is firmly fixed on the electric comb. When disassembling, it is necessary to use a hand-cranked puller to squeeze in the opposite direction. On the illusionist, there are visible stains. Most of these black substances are metal graphite on the carbon brush. These powders are left after the brush and the illusionist rub against each other. The entire winding foot surface has been completely oxidized and discolored. In order to avoid grinding to make the winding foot thinner and not affect the weight, it can only be heated. The increase in the surface temperature of the comb can not only deal with surface stains, it can also soften the winding foot after all the accumulated firewood is burned. The 3 combs being repaired have been burned black. This is exactly what the master wants. Wash and cool. After soaking for a short 5 seconds, the color of the winding is much brighter. For the disassembly of this comb winding, they can only straighten the winding by hand. When the winding is completely straight, use a Volf head hammer to make the sample. The winding can be withdrawn from the iron core intact, so that the master can turn the winding core. The comb iron core of the starter is composed of low-carbon silicon steel sheets stacked together. Under normal circumstances, there will be no failure. Due to the shielding of the iron core, the middle of the winding is not completely burned. As for the master, he also needs to open a small heating dirty for it. After the surface temperature rises, it is directly put into hydrochloric acid for acid brittle washing. After 5 minutes of chemical reaction, the winding that is about to be scrapped has its original luster. The winding needs to be corrected after disassembly. Then polish the silver corners of the winding clean. Every stain on the surface must be polished clean. The surface of the iron core is bright as new. This kind of winding is very easy to deform, which is why the master carefully checks each winding. Since the original insulation coating on the winding has been completely removed, the master still needs to manually cut the ultra-thin insulation paper. The length of the comb iron core is used as a mark, and the width of the winding is used as a crease. The folded insulation paper is close to the inner wall of the comb slot. This can also achieve the purpose of non-contact between the iron core and the winding. After sorting, the winding and the iron core are reassembled. The winding is located in the center of the folded insulation paper. When reassembling this comb winding, Fu has to pay attention when pressing. Since they don't have a high-end multimeter side resistance, they can only use a light bulb to measure the continuity. When the comb shaft and the winding are not connected, the insulation value in the iron core plays a role. Next, the phantom can be reinstalled. After measuring the position of the phantom, Fu also needs to insert the refurbished winding into the phantom comb slot. The current introduced by the phantom is transmitted to the winding. Each winding has 2 pins. This winding is also divided into the upper winding and the lower winding. To avoid short circuit, the lower winding will be covered with insulating paper after installation. It is also because the upper and lower windings are too close. When the windings are inserted into the phantom, the electric comb has been half refurbished. The winding pins are fine after grinding, which leads to loose clamping. The gap is welded to ensure that the electric comb will not loosen at the highest speed. After welding, the phantom is cooled with cold water. At this time, the electric comb has been fully assembled. Because the rear welding bar is higher than the phantom, the entire surface of the phantom needs to be turned and polished to avoid the oxide layer on the surface of the phantom. Then the damaged starter comb is refurbished. Such repair technology is really too difficult to perform.